Good morning. It's time for part two of the lesson we started yesterday. I'm going to back this slide up one. So we remind ourselves why we were talking about the collapse of the Soviet Empire. This is communism in the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, the USSR. Why is it declining? Why is it becoming less popular with its people? There were four reasons that I gave you here. And we're going to go on from there. Okay, so we talked about the unrest of the Eastern Europeans. These are countries like Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Poland, and others, Lithuania, Latvia, many of those. Their unrest, they really want to see democracy come to those countries. The people in them do. Unsettled leadership in the Soviet Union. We talked about the Brezhnev had ruled, Lenin, Stalin, Brezhnev had ruled with an iron fist, and the rulers that came after them didn't quite have that same charismatic leadership style. They didn't have the ability to control the people like the previous ones had. We talked about their economic woes, how the Soviet people themselves were seeing the great success in the West that came from our strong market economy. And then we also talked about the drain of the defense spending, leading them to nowhere. Okay. So we have Mikhail Gorbachev, who becomes the next Soviet premier. He's going to take the place of Brezhnev. There's actually a couple more in between, but they didn't serve very long. Mikhail Gorbachev has this wonderful idea that he's going to reform, but only mildly reform, the Soviet Empire. He proposes this plan, what he calls perestroika. This is a restructuring of the Soviet Union. The word perestroika means restructuring. He's going to start technological development. He's going to restructure the productivity and the bureaucracy, change that over, decentralize the management, and experiment with a free market system. So he has these wonderful ideas, and the people are very excited that they're going to finally see some relief from the heaviness of the Soviet Empire. He also he knew that he needed some financial assistance from the West, and in order to get that financial assistance, he proposed glasnost, or an openness, that he was going to share what he was doing with the people. He wasn't going to, make decisions randomly and enforce them on the people, but he was going to be open with the people of the West and with his own people, to show them what was going on. So, but these two policies set in motion forces, and I apologize that you can't read that led to the undoing of the Soviet state. Hold on, I'm going to try to move this. Led to the undoing of the Soviet state and their ultimate rejection of communism. If he could have foreseen that, would he have done it? Who knows? Who knows? Okay, we're going to keep going. Okay, so the unrest that we already talked about in Eastern Europe is going to actually make a physical appearance. It's not going to be just talk behind the scenes. And it's going to show up first in the country of Poland. Now, Poland has a group called Solidarity, and this is a labor union within the country, and they are the strongest voice within the country against communism. It seems weird, but the labor union is speaking out strongly against communism. They don't like it. They want it to end, and they find their champion in a man named Lech Walesa. And Lech Walesa was put forward from the Solidarity Party to actually win an election, to run for office and become the president. And he becomes he's the head of Solidarity and the leader of the movement for reform and resistance, and he is elected the president of Poland. And that happened in 1989. So Poland is going to completely pull away from communism. And then in Hungary and Czechoslovakia, they both had revolutions in the 50s and 60s that had been crushed by communism. They both are going to start distancing and pulling away from communism and denying that they want any part of it. And they both today have free economies. And then in 1989, President Reagan gives his famous speech, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. And the Berlin Wall does fall in 1989. Resistance on both sides start working away at making that wall fall and reuniting the city of Berlin and the country of Germany into one free country. Now, these nations, as they fight for freedom here in the 1980s and early 1990s, they fight gloriously hard and they are successful, but that doesn't do away with all their problems. These countries have been ruled for decades by a harsh dictator, and they're going to have a hard time establishing freedom, but other countries of Europe and the United States helped them, and today they are much better off than they ever were under communism. So those are starting to pull away from this Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, and then we still have Gorbachev in charge of the USSR as a whole. But he's starting to see some internal struggles within the mainland of Russia. He's struggling to maintain his control, and a young reformer named Boris Yeltsin, he doesn't look young in this picture, but as relating to the rest of the communist hardliners, as they were called, he is fairly young. The reformers in the country are angry with Gorbachev for his slow pace. They think he's not making his reforms fast enough. So Boris Yeltsin, who is a former communist, he is supporting this reform movement. He is elected president of Russia, which is just one country within the whole USSR. The USSR is all the countries, and Yeltsin is elected president of Russia, which of course is the largest of the countries. So when he does this, he announces the Communist Party ordered a 6-month state of emergency. A general strike at Yeltsin denounced the action of these hardliners. The army refused to obey the orders. The communists are trying to rise up and take back control, and they're able to put that down. And basically, Gorbachev becomes a man without a country, a wholly elected official without a country. And eventually, on, I think it's Christmas Day, he is forced, Christmas Day of 1991, he is forced to resign because he has no country left. Everybody's pulled out of the USSR, and they've made their own independent governments. Boris Yeltsin will now be the president of Russia. And these independent countries form the CIS, the Commonwealth of Independent States. These are all independent republics now, and they are going to remain independent despite communist attempt to take back control. And that is the fall of communism. And today it is still in China, in Cuba, in North Korea, and various other countries throughout Eastern Asia, but it is no longer in the Soviet Union or Russia or the Eastern European area. Okay, that's all I have for today. Tomorrow we will move on to the aftermath of the Cold War. I hope you have a great day.